Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Happy to have Dr. Alan Singer, educator-historian, with us. We're taping this edition of Media Watch the Wednesday after the midterm elections in the United States, being brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Zoom, and EVT Educational Productions. And Alan, real quick, what happened just before the election?
Well, first of all,
yesterday?
no one's going to find us on Twitter anymore. I'm not tweeting anymore because this really rich guy who just bought Twitter, Elon Musk, and for the life of me, I don't know how he made his money. He sent out a tweet to millions of people that they should vote with him for Republican candidates. I guess he felt that as a super rich guy, he shouldn't have to pay taxes.
As a super rich guy, he didn't have to worry about keeping a major media platform sort of neutral and let the people do whatever they want. He just decided that 115 million followers, I think that's what he has, following.
And he said months ago that the platform would remain neutral, but not so much, I guess, Alan, right?
Not so much at all. I'm waiting for him to let Donald Trump back on, but I actually erased my Twitter, what they call it, tag, from my email signature, and I no longer, when I do posts, I don't send it out anymore.
And you're among a lot of people who are leaving the platform at this moment on account of Elon Musk getting a hold of it. But there's some good advice I've seen from a couple of people on Twitter concerning how to leave Twitter effectively. First of all, this person named Peter Bowden Live, that was his handle on Twitter, suggesting that you don't delete your account, just don't use it, but tweet where you will be. I mean, if you're going to another platform, tweet to where that is. If you're not going to use social media at all, just say that. But don't delete your account, because if you delete your account, somebody else gets your handle, and anybody who references the handle will still point back to you, your old tweets. And so it can be messed up there. So the advice for me as a tech guy is to delete your account, just don't use it, and just let it sit. There's some allegations that Musk intends to deactivate accounts that aren't active within 30 days. I haven't heard that as a fact, but anyway, that's the way things are going. And this is a dark day for, in social media, because we have Trump owning Truth Social, Kanye, yay, purchasing Parler, and now Musk with Twitter. So not a good season for social media.
So if the Parler sale actually went through, I know he announced he was interested in buying it. I don't know if that actually was effective.
You're correct, Eric. He said he was going to seek it. You're right. I don't know if it went through either.
Yeah, it could be successful. So we'd have three wackos, because I think all three of them are wackos, owning major social media platforms. We're no longer going to post our Media Watch on Twitter, and I doubt if I'll be using my Twitter handle, but as you say, Bob, I will not try to delete it. I'll just let it sit there and not put anything, and I'll tweet, or maybe we should just tweet this last Media Watch and say, don't look for us here anymore, folks. Find us on Facebook. That might be the way to go.
I think our handle, wherever we end up, will always be Media Watch EVT. So just remember that, folks. If you Google that and looking for us, that's where we'll be.
Media Watch,
if not on Twitter.
EVT, right. And yeah, that's where you can find us on our YouTube channel. So, but picking up on the election that was kicked off with that crazy tweet, we don't want to get in depth in a big postmortem, but Alan, you had some thoughts on the U.S. election before we let the U.S. election put the rest of the globe in perspective for us.
Well, a lot of people are celebrating it, that it could have been worse. I don't like to celebrate that it could have been worse, because I'm really unhappy about what happened, especially in New York. the Democrats just didn't campaign well. All over the neighborhoods that I've been, you see Zeldin signs. Chuck Schumer apparently disappeared. Hochul did not run an effective campaign. As a result, Hochul won with about 53% of the vote. But Zeldin's strong showing helped to carry all 4 Long Island congressional seats for the Republicans, Staten Island, and may also include Westchester in that area.
Wait. Staten Island has been MAGA country from way back.
Yeah,
So
but
I don't think Lee Zeldin got Staten Island over. All right. But that Long Island district was kind of competitive because I know Nassau had a Democratic chief executive before the previous election, but a Republican MAGA guy knocked Laura Curran out in Long Island before these midterms. And so that's MAGA country out in Long Island. So the nature of the beast is the Democrats always fight an uphill battle in Long Island. But gerrymandering, correct me if I'm wrong, Republican gerrymandering has played a phenomenal role in some of these races. Because I think, who's the guy that's the DNC Democratic chair guy? Tim Ryan, what's his name? His seat is in jeopardy because of his district having gotten redrawn. And so I think he's going down. That's one of the New York seats that you're talking about, Alan. Go ahead.
Well, no, the gerrymandering is certainly nationwide. The Republicans were very successful in gerrymandering like states like Florida, just to knock out all Democrats out of the House.
Mm-hmm.
In New York, the Democrats tried their own games, but it got thrown out in the courts. And in the end, I think, Bob, you were describing what happened there.
Well, you're correct, Alan. The Democrats had a chance after the census to redistrict the state, and they did so, but they overdid it. The courts basically said, no, that's gerrymandering. That's not anywhere near fair, and they lost their chance in New York. So the districts we have now are, if you look at them, they're like rectangles and squares based on population. So the advantage they could have had in New York, they lost by overdoing the redistricting.
Yeah, but DeSantis overdid the redistricting in such an abhorrent way in Florida that was even worse than the New York gerrymandering. And the judge in Florida said, yeah, okay, this is fine. So the Republicans pick up 4 seats in the House because of DeSantis gerrymandering. So DeSantis is the big hero in the Republican Party right now, real quick after the midterms, right, Bob?
Yes, and even the New York Post, if anybody picked up a copy today, well, today as we're taping, the Wednesday after the election, the front page of the New York Post, and I think I'll spare putting it up, unless you really want to see it, no, I didn't think so, has DeSantis on the front page with the big headline, "De-Future," and a tiny little line at the bottom of the front page says, Kathy Hochul claims victory in the governor's race. And this is a New York City paper. And we got the Florida governor on the front page as the major news of the election, which it is not.
Well, you know that the New York Post is Rupert Murdoch flagship in the New York, is rag in the New York. I know he's trying to pretend that the Wall Street Journal is a paper of repute, but since he's owned it, he's messed with their editorial stance quite a bit. So the nature of the beast is, I can see why the New York Post would barely acknowledge Kathy Hochul's win. And it was close, as you were saying, Alan, and that could be because maybe Chuck Schumer and those folks did not think that the MAGA strength was going to play as strongly as it did. But real quick, anything else we want to say before we let this midterm jump us off into what it portends or what it shows about the way the globe is going?
2 quick things. One, the Republicans were hitting away on a fictional crime epidemic. And I think they're using crime as a euphemism for race. And what they're trying to do is stir up white fear of Blacks, Latinos, and immigrants. The other thing is people may not everybody doesn't know what gerrymandering is about. But what happened when the United States was a new country, this guy named Jerry in Massachusetts had organized a district that looked like a salamander. So they called it gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering. Yes, that's a good historical point to note, because I didn't have an idea where that actual name came from, even though I knew what it meant. You just squiggly the lines to make sure all the voters that will put you in office are in your district, and you get reelected perpetually. That's what both parties have been doing for centuries, from the days of the founding of the country. They've been trying to get independent commissions to draw districts, but they can't seem to get that past any state legislatures. Not too many. Some of them actually have passed it, but not that many. But
just a quick note on what Alan just said about the crime being a euphemism for race. I mean, we had the Republican, I believe, in out west Attorney General candidate posting a picture of Tiger Woods getting arrested. Apparently, the ad agency didn't realize it was him, in a campaign that stressed the capital punishment. You know, so somehow they found that photo and thought it was the right one to put up in the campaign ad. And then there was the Lee Zeldin ad that used apparently a mentally disturbed man who pointed a fake gun at people and ended up getting killed by police. It happened long before Hochul's administration. Yet it was in the Zeldin ad as an example of a crime, you know, in New York State. So anyway, yes, the euphemism is there. Not to belabor this point.
I'm glad you guys raised that point, because I've been saying on Media Watch and elsewhere in conversations, the Republican playbook for the last 50 plus years has been fear and race. Fear, stir up white fear, and make it fear against Black and brown people and any other. That's been their playbook since Richard Nixon and Lee Atwater and Ronald Reagan and even George H.W. Bush. I think Atwater worked for H.W. Bush and did the whole Willie Horton campaign stuff. So they have done this for over 50 years. The guy who actually blatantly pulled it out in the open was Donald Trump, the MAGA guy himself, who called people rapists and killers and whatever coming down the escalator. And because he got away with it successfully and became their candidate and then actually got elected, and people say, well, there were a lot of deniers that he was actually elected. Yeah, I'm one of the non-believers. I think the Russians put him in office, but at least the Democrats conceded, as opposed to the same MAGA quack who has yet to conceded it privately, but then tells the big lie that everybody's been selling, that's actually over 200 plus people or more have been elected in this current Congress, in this midterm elections, who are election deniers of the 2020 election in one way. Successfully elected in these midterms, over 220 individuals. So that tells you the status of this so-called democracy and the belief in safe, fair elections. A whole lot of them haven't conceded this midterm stuff. I don't even know if Kerry Lake has conceded yet, okay, in that governor's race. Maybe that one's still too close to call. I don't know. It's a Wednesday when we're taping. By Monday when this airs, we'll find out whether she has lost and refuses to concede, or whether she pulled it out at the last minute and will then say, oh, it was a fair election.
I'm sorry, is that Michigan you're talking about?
Kerry Lake is out there in Arizona.
Arizona, okay.
Yep. And Arizona, of course, is denial central. That's where you had those wacko ninja accountants trying to recount the 2020 presidential election. And then they recounted it, screwed up the entire Arizona electoral sacrosanct of the ballot, and turned out Biden won by a couple more votes than they thought originally. But they're still denying it, okay? And so,
Eric, you know that because of drought and climate change in Arizona, the lakes are drying up.
Yeah, well, who knows?
I like that, Alan.
Maybe that metaphor will come out for real, and she'll dry up and blow away in real life. The person, not the lakes. But we have a problem in this country, and guess what? We're keeping our fingers crossed. a couple of weeks ago, early November, Bolsonaro got booted out in Brazil, right? The Lula da Silva successfully did a comeback, even though he claimed he was erroneously charged and put in jail for stuff that he didn't do. There was a political witch hunt. That one I didn't dig into enough to know whether he's telling the truth or not. But he served his time, we let him out, and he mounted a political comeback and he beat Bolsonaro, which I was happy to hear, because that meant maybe Lula would continue to protect the Amazon rainforest that Bolsonaro was chopping down and putting into the hands of all the oligarchs in Brazil so they could all get rich while he destroyed the planet. So Bolsonaro, I am told, I read a report, a Fox online outlet, and I don't usually check Fox for accuracy, but the Fox people actually said Bolsonaro, who I'm sure they followed because he was a Trump wannabe, actually conceded to his Supreme Court in Brazil that, yes, this election's over, let's move on. But what's going on with the supporters, Bob?
Well, his supporters in Brazil, like you said, Eric, Bolsonaro said before the Supreme Court out there that it's over, let's move on. But we have truck drivers in Brazil who are blocking highways and setting tires on fire and shutting down, trying to shut down commerce. And then you have people camping outside of military installations, hoping that something will be done about this election, which they believe was stolen. So I mean, even though Bolsonaro has said let's move on, he sold the big lie for so long that they just absorbed it and they're not willing to let go of it. So yes, there's still trouble to be had in Brazil. Lula notwithstanding, hopefully he can do something about the forest and about the just the state of democracy in Brazil, but we'll see.
Brazil has a long history of military dictatorships, and its democracy is relatively new and fragile. And that is a really big concern, because if the Bolsonaro people are able to create enough havoc, you may have the emergence of a new military dictatorship.
If there's a lot of unrest, the military will just say, okay, we're going to take over. Happens all the time. Okay, strongman Bolsonaro was autocratically trying to rule Brazil, which is why he was roughshod over his own legislature, did what he did against a lot of rulings about protecting the indigenous people in the Amazon. Those people, I believe, came out in force and helped vote him out of office because he had totally decimated their lives and livelihood. So that strongman kind of went down, but it looks like the hardliners and people in love with folks who don't like the compromise won the day in Israel. Alan, tell us a little bit about the Israelis.
Well, again, it's another very depressing circumstance. Israel has been pretty evenly split between its moderates and its conservatives. And what happened is the conservatives under Netanyahu, the former prime minister, who really was out of office because of his corruption and legal cases, what he did is he made a deal with the most extreme religious fanatics, people who want to displace the entire Arab population in Israel and in Palestine and claim it because they believe that God gave it to them in the Bible. Personally, I have never spoken to God, so I don't know about the Bible and what it did and who it gave what to. But these are people who have lived there for thousands of years. And the extremists are now connected to the Netanyahu coalition, and they may end up with cabinet positions. And this is very dire for the future there.
But it looks like Netanyahu is going to once again be running the country, because once he forms his coalition, they're going to come together. They'll vote for their prime minister. What's his title? Prime minister, right?
Prime minister.
Yeah, and so it looks like he'll be back in the chair running the country again, correct?
But unlike the United States, the cabinet works for the president. In Israel, because governments are coalitions, the cabinet ministers are relatively independent. And what he's going to have to do is give these extreme right-wingers, the religious fanatics, seats in the government to run different parts of their country. So it's not just Netanyahu that is going to the extreme right.
Mm.
The whole government is going to include these people. Very disturbing.
Okay, so that's not boding well for the Palestinians if Netanyahu's back in power. And so it looks as if, crystal ball prediction, there's going to be a lot of turmoil in Israel come the next few years, because I don't think the Palestinians are still going to sit there and be disenfranchised. And so whoever their hardliners are, I'm sure they're going to be trying to do things to make their voices heard and make their grievances known. It's not going to be good for anybody in the Middle East, my prediction.
And Alan, Netanyahu is still under indictment, isn't he? For
trial's still coming up, yeah.
Yes.
But he's not, once he becomes prime minister, I believe that at least the prior precedent is that the cases will be put on hold.
Okay.
While he's in power.
Yeah, while he's in power.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Because that's what happened before. The cases have been there for a long time. They only were activated when he left office. Once he's back in office, those cases will be frozen.
Real quick, like that means that's why he made sure he formed a new government, so he can put that on the back burner. That's why your guy, your MAGA guy here, is probably going to declare whether or not he's wanted to in office. He's going to declare just so he has a chance of delaying all these lawsuits against him. That's our MAGA guy. But to stay in the Middle East, pick up on Israel's next door neighbor, Egypt, because they're under the microscope right now, because they're holding COP27, right, Alan? That's the climate summit for the globe. And as much as I'd like to get into what they need to be doing on that climate summit, I'm more interested in the politics that's going on during the meeting. Bob, there was something about the dissident who has been jailed by the Egyptian government, and his sister was trying to make his case known because he's on a hunger strike. Tell us about this story.
Yes, I'll try to cue it up as I'm speaking. But yes, the sister of the dissident who's on a hunger strike in Egypt was speaking at COP. She was on the podium, and one of the Egyptian politicians stood up from his position in the audience and started berating her. Says, "How dare you speak in support of this prisoner?" And he refused to relent. Security actually had to go grab the mic from him. So this case with the dissident is causing turmoil in COP, so much so that some participants have said, if the dissident dies, we're walking out. So this is really affecting world politics as this plays out. I think you have a little bit more on this, Alan, right?
Yeah, well, there apparently are tens of thousands of political prisoners in a dictatorship in Egypt that allows no dissent. And I mean, this has been a major problem. One of the questions is, why would the United Nations hold an international climate summit in a city in a dictatorship like this? It gives them credibility, and that's very disturbing. I mean, the other problems with the climate summit is that a lot of corporations are using it for greenwashing. What they do is they promote the summit, and that way they don't have to abide by its recommendations.
They end up looking good. And just to be complete, the name of the dissident is Allah Abd El Fattah. That's the name of the dissident, and his sister's name is, if I can pull it up really quickly, Sana Saif. Yes, just to be accurate in what we say.
Now,
here.
they're British. They have British citizenry through their mother.
Yes.
And you would think the United States and Great Britain would raise a big objection, but they're keeping their mouths shut because they want to be able to deal with Egypt.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to deal with, you know.
His sister, Mona Saif.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me? She's hoping that the British Prime Minister will go to bat for her brother, because the mother is a British citizen. And while he's at that summit, she would like him to at least address her brother's plight with the Egyptian government.
And just to keep us on time, we have about 3 minutes left.
Well-known climate activist, what's her name? Young Greta
Thunberg.
Yeah,
Thunberg,
Greta Thunberg, yes.
Greta Thunberg said, I will not attend this summit because this country that they're holding summit got all kinds of political prisoners. They horrible on human rights, plenty of human rights abuse. Why would we even want to hold? So she said, no, I can't go there. So it's Egypt was hoping that they could look good holding the summit. This dissident, he had a 5-year sentence for putting something on Facebook that was derogatory about the government, so they put him in jail. I mean, he didn't throw a bomb, he didn't try to assassinate anybody, he just put something up on Facebook. And so that kind of dictatorship, that kind of autocratic government is what's now running Egypt. And so, yeah, I can see why people are upset that COP is sitting in Egypt at Sharm el Sheikh or wherever the heck they're holding it. But one last quick thing is Ukraine. That war is still going on. That war is causing all the inflation that the Democrats can't seem to get over here in this country. At least it's playing a big part of it. The one good note that I heard recently was that the president, Volodymyr Zelensky, said he would be willing to talk peace with Vladimir Putin now. He said he wasn't going to talk peace while Putin was still in office. The rest of the world convinced him you should be talking peace. He said, okay, fine. I will sit down and have peace discussions with him, but I'm not having peace discussions unless he gives back my territory and unless he gets back. So Zelensky said, you want me to talk, okay? I will talk, but I'm not giving up my country just because you guys want us to talk. If he gives up the country, gives us back what he's taken, et cetera, and you know Putin's not going to agree to any of that. So
Putin needs an out, and he's trying to provide one. Putin has no end game, so he's trying to. That's what he's trying to offer. And we have about 45 seconds left.
Well, in 45 seconds, I guess we could say, well, we don't know what's really going to happen in the United States. The Senate is still up for grabs. The Democrats may get an extra seat. They may be 50-50. I don't think the Republicans are going to gain control of the Senate. I could be wrong.
Well, the Democrats still have a shot at Nevada. They should take Arizona. They're going to have to take Georgia. And Georgia looks like it's going to go into a runoff. And that won't be resolved till December.
That's where we are, folks.
I'm just hoping that Herschel Walker gets called for a 15-yard penalty.
We're out of time with that. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
Bob Anthony. Watch us, catch us to us on Twitter at Media Watch EVT for the moment.
And I'm your guest and friend, Alan Singer. Thank you for having me.
But our YouTube channel, you can always find us. Media Watch EVT, and definitely on Facebook. And guess what? LinkedIn as well.